The caretaker arrived at the community center early in the morning before anyone else. The building was quiet, still wrapped in the soft glow of dawn. She pushed open the heavy doors, the hinges creaking slightly, and stepped inside. The familiar smell of polished wood and old papers greeted her. She had been doing this job for years, and every corner of the center felt like a part of her daily rhythm. She hung her coat on the hook near the entrance and moved silently through the empty hallways. She started her morning like always, checking each room, straightening chairs, and making sure the floors were clean. Most people who worked at the center or visited it often never really noticed her. She was always there, but never in the spotlight. Some thought of her as just the caretaker, someone who kept things tidy and made sure the center ran smoothly. They never imagined that beneath her simple appearance, there was a depth few could even guess. The piano sat in the main hall. She walked past it, her fingers brushing lightly against the keys. It was a gentle, almost affectionate touch, like greeting an old friend. She hummed a soft tune to herself as she moved on, pretending to focus on sweeping the floors. No one ever knew she had played this piano herself, not for years. Not since life had pulled her away from her dreams, by the time the first visitors arrived. The caretaker was already busy tidying the main hall. A few people waved as they passed by, nodding in acknowledgement, but most didn't notice her at all. She worked quietly, taking pride in her duties even when no one recognized her effort. There was a rhythm to her movements, a silent poetry in the way she handled her tasks. Each sweep of the broom, each dusted shelf, was part of her invisible choreography. The community center was hosting a small event that day. Some children were arriving for a music class, while a few elderly visitors came for their weekly gathering. She watched them from the corner, her eyes calm and observant. She knew the routines, the small details that made the place run smoothly. She noticed when someone left a chair out of place or when a book was slightly askew. She fixed these things quietly. Without expecting any thanks, the piano became the center of her attention whenever she had a free moment. She would sit nearby, pretending to sort through papers or sweep around it, but her hands always found their way to the keys. She played soft melodies, sometimes recalling old songs from her childhood, sometimes making up new ones that floated in the air like whispers. She played for herself, for the music that still lived inside her, even if no one else knew. Most people in the center assumed she was just another caretaker. They never suspected that she had once spent years learning music, practicing tirelessly, and dreaming of a life filled with melodies. Life had taken a different path for her, full of responsibilities and sacrifices, but the music never left her. It stayed hidden, a quiet companion in her solitary moments. As the day went on, she continued her work with steady focus. She guided a lost child to the right room, helped an elderly visitor find a comfortable seat, and managed to do it all without drawing attention to herself. Her presence was calm, almost grounding, like a silent anchor in the bustle of the center. People came and went, some chatting, some laughing, some simply passing through, and she remained in the background. Unnoticed, yet essential. During a break, she took a moment to sit at the piano when the room was empty. Her fingers danced lightly across the keys, exploring the instrument with familiarity and longing. The notes were soft at first, cautious, as if testing the space. Then, slowly, the music grew bolder, richer. She closed her eyes and let herself get lost in the sound, letting the melody carry memories of a time when she dreamed without restraint. The caretaker's life outside, the center was quiet and uneventful, much like her work within it. She lived alone in a small apartment, managed her modest expenses carefully, and spent her free time listening to music or walking in the park. She had learned to find joy in simplicity, to appreciate small moments of beauty. Yet despite the quiet exterior, there was an intensity inside her, a passion that few could ever imagine. Music was not just a hobby for her, it was a lifeline, a way to connect with the part of herself that the world had asked her to put aside. As evening approached, the center began to empty. People thanked each other for attending the events and slowly made their way home. She stayed behind, as always, making sure everything was in order. She wiped down the piano one last time, straightened the benches, and made sure the lights were turned off. When the doors finally closed behind the last visitor, she took a deep breath and allowed herself a moment of solitude in the stillness of the empty hall. She played the piano once more. The notes echoed softly, filling the space with a haunting beauty. She played songs that spoke of longing, of quiet strength, of dreams that never died. The music was a secret she carried alone, a testament to the life she had lived and the talent that still burned within her. She didn't play for anyone else, but the music felt alive, almost as if it recognized her own resilience. Night fell, and she finally turned off the lights, locking the doors behind her. She walked home slowly, feeling the cool evening air against her face. There was a sense of contentment in her steps, a quiet satisfaction in knowing that, even if no one else realized it, she was still connected to her passion. The piano waited for her return, patient and silent, like a friend who understood everything without needing words. Though the world saw her as just a caretaker, she carried a secret strength and a hidden beauty that no one could take away. Her life was simple, but her heart was full of music. And somewhere deep inside, she held on to the hope that one day the world might hear her story through the keys of the piano she loved so dearly. Until then, she moved through her days with quiet dignity, letting her work and her music speak in ways words never could. The caretaker's mornings always began the same way, quietly moving through the empty center. But the music she played on the piano carried memories of a life that once held different hopes and dreams. She had not always been just a caretaker. Once, she had lived in a small, sunlit apartment filled with the smell of fresh flowers and the sound of music. Her life had been simple but rich, full of dreams that seemed possible at the time. She had discovered the piano as a child. Her parents had noticed her fascination with sound, how her little fingers would tap on tables or any surface to create rhythms. When she first touched the keys, it was as if the world opened for her. She would sit for hours, pressing keys and listening to the melodies that came alive beneath her hands. Every note seemed to speak to her, and every song she learned carried a story. Music became her companion, her comfort, and her way of understanding the world around her. Her childhood was not without struggles. Money was always tight, and the family faced many hardships. Yet, the piano remained a constant, a sanctuary where she could escape the harshness of reality. Her parents, though unable to give her much, encouraged her love for music. They found a way to rent lessons from a kind teacher who saw her potential and nurtured it. She practiced tirelessly, often staying up late into the night, her fingers learning the language of notes while the world outside slept as she grew older. Life's demands began to pull her away from her passion. Responsibilities increased, and the path she had dreamed of becoming a professional musician started to feel like a distant hope. A parent became ill, requiring care and attention. Money became an even greater concern, leaving little room for music lessons or performances. Yet she never let the music leave her. Even when her hands could no longer dance across a full piano, she would hum the melodies to herself. Replaying her favorite pieces in her mind, she learned to balance survival with the quiet persistence of her dreams. She took jobs to pay bills, sometimes working long hours in places where no one noticed her except for the work she did. Still, she carried the piano in her heart, and even the smallest moments of music brought her comfort. The skills she had developed over years were not lost, they waited patiently, like seeds beneath the soil, ready to bloom again when given a chance. Life continued its steady rhythm, full of challenges and small victories. She learned the value of patience, of quiet endurance, and of finding happiness in simple things. The caretaker job at the community center came at a time when she needed stability. It was honest work, and she embraced it with the same dedication she once reserved for music. She moved through the halls with care, noticing the details others overlooked, taking pride in work that was often invisible to the people around her. Yet the piano in the hall was always there, a reminder of what she had once loved, and of the talent that still lived inside her. She would sometimes sit at the piano in the quiet moments, her fingers hovering above the keys before playing. She remembered the first time she performed in front of an audience, the way the room had filled with sound, the way people had smiled and applauded. That memory was bittersweet, a reminder of joy she had experienced and of the life that circumstances had altered. Yet even in sadness, the memory gave her strength. She realized that the music inside her was not gone. It had been waiting patiently for the day she could let it shine again. Her days at the center were full, but her mind often wandered to the past. She would recall the music competitions she had once entered, the way her hands moved across the piano, and the feeling of pride when she mastered a difficult piece. She remembered her teacher, who had told her that music was not just about notes and rhythm, but about conveying emotion, about telling stories that words could never fully express. That lesson stayed with her, guiding her even as life pulled her away from performing publicly, despite all the hardships. She had learned to find joy in small victories. She had learned to appreciate the beauty and simplicity, the comfort of routine, and the quiet moments of reflection. Her love for music was no longer just about skill or recognition. It had become a part of who she was, a silent strength that sustained her through difficult times. The piano was not just an instrument. It was a companion, a reminder of resilience and hope. Even now, she went about her work at the community center. She found ways to keep music alive. She would tap her fingers lightly on the piano keys while organizing the hall, hum melodies while arranging chairs, and imagine herself performing in front of an audience, even if only in her mind. These moments were her secret world, a place where she could connect with her past and nurture the dreams she had carried for so long. Her colleagues and visitors knew her as quiet and efficient, a caretaker who went about her work without complaint or expectation. They did not know about the nights she spent practicing in her mind, about the memories of performances that shaped her life, or about the deep connection she had with music. They assumed she had no special talent, no hidden gifts. It was easier for them to see her as ordinary because they did not take the time to notice the depths she carried within her. Even the piano itself seemed to recognize her presence. When she touched the keys, it responded as if welcoming her back after years of absence. The sound that filled the hall was soft at first, tentative, but gradually it gained confidence, reflecting the years of practice and love she had poured into it. Every note was infused with emotion, telling stories of childhood dreams, hardships, and quiet determination. It was not about perfection, but about expression, about letting the music speak for her when words could not. In these quiet moments, she felt alive in a way that daily routines and responsibilities could never fully provide. She remembered the joy of learning new pieces, the thrill of performing, and the pride of mastering difficult compositions. These memories fueled her spirit, giving her the courage to keep moving forward even when the world around her did not notice. Music had been her first love, and it remained a source of solace and strength. It was a part of her identity that could not be diminished by circumstance. Life had taught her patience, resilience, and humility. She had learned to carry her dreams quietly, nurturing them in private until the right moment arrived. Though she was no longer performing on grand stages, she understood that talent and passion could exist anywhere, even in unnoticed places. Her life was proof that greatness did not always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it waited quietly, like a hidden treasure, until the world was ready to see it. As the day drew to a close, she lingered at the piano, letting the final notes of her practice echo through the empty hall. Each sound was a reminder of her journey, of the life she had lived, and of the strength she carried within her. She did not need an audience to validate her talent. The music itself was reward enough. It was her connection to a past filled with dreams, a present grounded in dedication, and a future still holding possibilities. Even as she left the community center that evening, she felt the quiet satisfaction of a life lived with care and purpose. Her past, full of music and challenges, had shaped her into the person she had become. And though the world might see her as just a caretaker, she knew that beneath the surface, there was a depth of talent and resilience that could not be ignored forever. Music had remained her constant companion, and she carried it with her in every step, every breath, and every quiet moment, waiting for the day when it might once again touch the lives of others. The community center was buzzing with activity that morning, unusually so for a place that usually hummed quietly under the soft rhythm of daily routines. An important event was scheduled, a small concert for local residents that promised music and warmth to those who came. People were arriving, chatting in small groups, setting down their coats and finding their seats. The caretaker moved among them, performing her usual tasks, adjusting chairs, wiping tables, ensuring the hall was presentable. She remained largely unnoticed, a familiar shadow in the background. Calm and efficient as always. The scheduled pianist, however, did not arrive. A phone call earlier had informed the organizers that she was delayed due to unforeseen circumstances. Panic rippled through the team. The audience would arrive soon, and a key part of the event, the music, was suddenly missing. A frantic discussion began at the front. Voices raised in urgency as they scrambled to find a solution. One of the staff members suggested asking someone else to play. There were a few volunteers, but none had the skill to fill the role of the professional pianist who had been booked. It seemed impossible. Someone, almost jokingly, pointed to the caretaker and asked if she could play. There was a brief moment of silence, followed by laughter from some staff members. They had seen her sweep floors, arrange chairs, and tidy up after events. But no one had ever imagined that she might be able to play the piano. She was quiet, simple, and unassuming, the last person anyone would think of as capable of performing in front of an audience. The suggestion was made half in jest, half in desperation. But it was the only option left. She froze for a moment, surprised by the request. Her heart beat faster, a mixture of fear, anticipation, and old excitement. Memories of her past life as a musician flooded back, bringing both joy and hesitation. She had not performed in front of an audience for many years, but the music inside her had never faded. She took a deep breath, weighing the moment carefully. The staff looked at her expectantly, unsure if she would agree. She nodded slowly, accepting the challenge with quiet determination. Word spread quickly through the audience. People were curious, some skeptical, some amused, as the caretaker was asked to sit at the piano. The room fell into an unusual silence, a mix of anticipation and disbelief. Some whispered to each other, questioning whether she could really play. Others simply watched, unsure of what to expect. The caretaker herself felt a surge of nervous energy, but beneath it lay a steady current of confidence that had been cultivated over years of private practice and hidden talent. She approached the piano, her hands brushing lightly over the keys as if greeting an old friend. The room seemed to hold its breath. She sat down, adjusted her posture, and allowed herself a brief moment to focus. The first notes she played were soft, tentative, testing the space and the audience. They were not bold or flashy, but they carried a subtle beauty, a quiet grace that drew people's attention. The sound seemed to settle over the hall like a gentle wave, smoothing the tension and uncertainty that had filled the room. As she continued, her confidence grew. The music flowed naturally, effortlessly, carrying emotion with every note. She played pieces she had known by heart, melodies that had been part of her since childhood. The audience was captivated, their initial skepticism fading into wonder. Eyes widened, whispers stopped, and attention turned fully toward her. The caretaker, once invisible, had become the center of the room, commanding it not with words or showiness, but with pure musical expression. Her playing was filled with depth and feeling. Every note seemed to tell a story of her life, of the struggles she had endured, the sacrifices she had made, and the quiet strength she had developed. The music spoke for her in a way that words never could. It communicated her past and her resilience, her dreams and her endurance. The audience could feel it even if they did not know her story. The caretaker, once overlooked, had become the living embodiment of the power of hidden talent. Some of the listeners were moved to tears. The elderly woman in the front row clasped her hands together, remembering her own past and the music that had shaped her life. Children watched in fascination, their eyes wide with admiration, as if witnessing magic. Staff members who had doubted her looked on in awe, unable to conceal their surprise. The music had transformed the atmosphere, turning curiosity and amusement into deep respect and appreciation. The caretaker played for what felt like hours, though in reality it was only a short time. Each piece was chosen with care, reflecting different emotions and moods. Sometimes soft and tender, sometimes bold and expressive, the music was a journey through her life and her heart. She moved effortlessly from one piece to another, her fingers gliding across the keys with precision and feeling. There was no hesitation, no faltering, only the pure joy of expression and connection. As the final notes faded into silence, the audience was struck by the unexpected brilliance of her performance. A moment of quiet lingered, as if no one wanted to break the spell. Then, slowly, applause began, soft at first, and then growing into a full, warm ovation. People stood, clapping and cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes. The caretaker remained seated for a moment, taking it all in, feeling the warmth and recognition she had not expected. The music had spoken, and the audience had listened. The organizers approached her, their faces filled with gratitude and astonishment. They could hardly believe what had just happened. The caretaker had saved the day, transforming a potential disaster into a moment of beauty and wonder. Her quiet dedication and hidden talent had turned the event into something unforgettable. Words were unnecessary. The music had conveyed everything that needed to be said. Afterwards, she returned to her duties, quietly tidying the hall and arranging chairs once more. People tried to express their amazement, but she only smiled softly and continued her work. She did not seek recognition or praise. The music itself had been enough. Yet, in that moment, she felt a sense of validation, a confirmation that her talent had not been lost, and that the years of patience and quiet practice had not been in vain. The event ended successfully, and visitors left the hall with smiles and stories to tell. The caretaker remained, finishing her usual tasks, her heart still buoyed by the experience. She knew that something had shifted both in the way others perceived her and in the way she saw herself. The invisible caretaker had become a presence to be remembered, a living testament to the power of hidden abilities and unacknowledged potential. That night, as she left the center, the music lingered in her mind. She walked home slowly, replaying the melodies she had shared with the audience. For the first time in many years, she felt the possibility of a new chapter. One in which her talent might be recognized, one in which she could embrace the music she had carried quietly for so long. She knew there were challenges ahead, but she also knew that her dedication and love for music had never truly left her. The caretaker, who had been expected to do nothing more than her daily work, had shown the world and herself that greatness can reside in the most unexpected places. Waiting for the right moment to shine, the moment the caretaker sat at the piano, there was a shift in the room that no one could quite explain. It was more than curiosity or disbelief. It was a silent anticipation, a sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. Her hands hovered over the keys, her eyes closing briefly as she took a deep breath, and then she began. The first notes were soft, almost shy, but they carried a depth that immediately captured attention. The music was gentle but deliberate, every sound deliberate and full of emotion. The audience leaned forward, sensing the story hidden in each note. The caretaker did not need to speak. Her hands told the story, and the piano became her voice. Each chord seemed to reach out, connecting with the hearts of those listening. She played with a subtle power, a skill that came from years of experience and a deep understanding of music's language. The notes rose and fell, sometimes tender, sometimes strong, expressing joy, sadness, longing, and hope, all at once. People who had doubted her earlier now watched in awe. Some could hardly believe the music was coming from the quiet woman they had ignored or underestimated for years. Children were mesmerized, their eyes wide, trying to understand how someone so ordinary in appearance could create something so extraordinary. Elderly visitors felt tears welling up, memories stirring of their own lives, joys and sorrows. Every person in the room was drawn into the caretaker's story, carried along by the music without even realizing it. The piano seemed to respond to her touch, as if it recognized the bond between them. Her fingers moved with confidence and precision, flowing across the keys effortlessly. There were moments of tenderness where the music caressed the soul, moments of strength where it filled the room with grandeur. It was not about speed or technical showmanship. It was about expression, about letting the music breathe and live. Every note had meaning, and every pause held weight. The caretaker was telling the story of her life, her struggles, her sacrifices, and her unbroken spirit. she played a piece that she had learned as a child. One that reminded her of the first time she fell in love with music. The melody was simple but haunting, evoking memories of a home filled with hope and encouragement despite difficulties. As her fingers danced across the keys, she remembered her parents watching her with pride, her teacher guiding her patiently, and the countless hours of practice that had shaped her talent. The music carried those memories into the present, bridging the gap between past and present, and creating a connection with the audience that transcended words. The audience could feel the emotion in every note. They were not just hearing music. They were experiencing it, living it through the caretaker's expression. Some held their breath, afraid to break the magic of the moment. Others closed their eyes, letting themselves be carried away by the beauty and power of the performance. The caretaker was no longer invisible. She had become a storyteller, conduit for emotions that resonated deeply with everyone present. As the performance continued, the complexity of the music grew. She transitioned seamlessly from soft, contemplative passages to powerful, dramatic sections that demanded attention. The audience was captivated, drawn into the ebb and flow of the music. Each piece was carefully chosen to reflect different aspects of life, moments of joy, sorrow, struggle, and triumph. She played with a sensitivity that made every note feel alive, every chord a reflection of the human experience. The music was no longer just her own. It had become a shared experience. Touching the hearts of everyone in the room, some members of the audience began to whisper, expressing their astonishment. "I had no idea she could play like this," one said. "It's incredible," another whispered. The words were carried quietly through the room, but they could not diminish the power of the music. The caretaker remained focused, fully absorbed in her performance, her eyes closed at times, letting her heart guide her hands. She was not performing for praise or recognition. She was performing because it was an expression of her true self. The caretaker's playing reached its emotional peak when she began a piece that combined elements of her life story, her early love for music, the struggles she had faced, and the resilience she had developed over the years. The melody was complex yet natural, flowing with an intensity that spoke of triumph over adversity. Her hands moved with grace and confidence, every note resonating with the audience. People could feel the depth of her experiences, the years of dedication, and the passion that had never left her. As the final notes approached, the music became more gentle, a soft descent that reflected reflection and closure. The room was completely silent, the audience holding their collective breath, not wanting to disturb the moment. The last chord lingered in the air, a perfect ending to a performance that had touched everyone deeply. The silence that followed was profound, filled with awe and respect. Then, slowly, applause began to build, soft at first, then growing louder and more enthusiastic. People stood, clapping, cheering, and some even wiped tears from their eyes. The caretaker remained seated for a moment, letting the applause wash over her. She did not smile broadly or make grand gestures. She simply allowed herself to feel the warmth and acknowledgement of the audience. For years, she had played in silence, hidden from the world, but now the music had spoken and the world had listened. She had transformed the event, turning a simple concert into a moment of beauty, connection, and inspiration. The organizers approached her with expressions of disbelief and gratitude. They could not comprehend how someone they had overlooked could create such an unforgettable experience. Yet they did not need to understand. They could feel it, and that was enough. The caretaker had shown them the power of hidden talent, the value of patience, and the importance of recognizing potential in unexpected places. She had proven that greatness can reside quietly, waiting for the right moment to shine. After the audience had left, she stayed behind to tidy the hall, but there was a difference now. People passed by her with smiles and nods, some stopping to express their admiration. Her work as a caretaker continued, but she was no longer invisible. The music had changed everything, creating a new perception not only among the audience but also within herself. She realized that her talent, long hidden and underestimated, had the power to move and inspire, to touch lives in ways she had never imagined. That evening, as she walked home, she felt a profound sense of fulfillment. The music she had carried quietly for years had finally been heard, and it had made a difference. She replayed the performance in her mind, savoring the emotions, the connection, and the silent validation of her abilities. She understood that this was only the beginning, that there would be more opportunities to share her gift, more moments where her music could bring joy and inspiration. The caretaker had always known that her life was not defined by recognition or fame. She had lived quietly, finding satisfaction in small victories and the beauty of everyday life. Yet, in that performance, she discovered something new: the power of her talent to touch others, to communicate emotions that words could never capture. It was a revelation, a confirmation of her worth and a reminder that hidden potential can shine when the right moment arrives. The music lingered in her heart as she returned to her apartment. She sat quietly, letting the memories of the day wash over her. For the first time in many years, she felt seen, not just as a caretaker, but as a person with talent, depth, and passion. The piano, the music, and the audience had shown her that her abilities mattered, that her life story could inspire and move others. She smiled softly, a quiet acknowledgement of the journey she had undertaken, the challenges she had overcome, and the music that had never left her. The night was peaceful, filled with the promise of new beginnings. She knew that the event had changed perceptions, not only for the audience, but also for herself. She had learned that courage, dedication, and passion could overcome doubt and expectation. The caretaker, once overlooked and underestimated, had revealed her true self through the piano, leaving an indelible mark on everyone who heard her play. The music had spoken, and the world had listened, forever transforming the quiet life she had led into one of inspiration and recognition. The morning after the performance, the caretaker arrived at the community center with a quiet sense of anticipation. Something had shifted the day before, and she could feel it in the air. People greeted her differently now, not just with polite nods or passing smiles, but with genuine warmth and recognition. Staff members who had once overlooked her paused to say thank you, to comment on how remarkable her playing had been. She responded with her soft, modest smile. Unaccustomed to praise, but quietly appreciative, visitors and regular attendees lingered as they arrived, some asking questions about the performance, wanting to know more about the music she had played. Children whispered among themselves, replaying the melodies in their heads, while older visitors shared their amazement with each other. The caretaker moved through the hall with the same careful attention to detail as before, but she could sense the difference in the energy around her. It was no longer just a routine day. The air carried a new respect and curiosity. The organizers gathered around discussing the impact of her performance. They had never expected anything like it, and they were eager to share the news with the wider community. They suggested inviting her to play at future events, to allow her talent to reach more people. The caretaker listened quietly, feeling a mix of pride and humility. She had never sought recognition, yet the idea of sharing her music more widely stirred a quiet excitement within her. Word of her performance began to spread. People who had attended the event told their friends and family, describing the unexpected brilliance of the caretaker who had sat at the piano and transformed the room with her music. Some visitors returned to the center just to see her, curious to witness her talent firsthand. Each interaction reinforced the realization that her hidden abilities had finally been recognized, that her years of dedication and quiet practice had not gone unnoticed. Despite the attention, she continued her daily work with the same diligence as before. She cleaned floors, arranged chairs, and ensured the center was welcoming and orderly. Yet now, as she worked, she felt a quiet confidence, a sense that she had finally proven to herself that her talent mattered. The piano was no longer just a companion for private moments. It was a bridge between her inner world and the world around her. Each time she played, she connected with people in a way that transcended words, touching hearts and inspiring admiration. Over the following weeks, the caretaker was invited to perform at various events in the community. She accepted selectively, choosing occasions where her music could bring comfort, joy, or inspiration. Each performance was met with awe and appreciation. Audiences were captivated not only by her skill, but also by the story that the music conveyed, the story of a quiet, dedicated life, of resilience, and of talent that had long been hidden. She became an unexpected symbol of hope and perseverance for those who witnessed her play. At home, she reflected on the journey that had led to this point. She thought about her childhood, the early love for music, the challenges and responsibilities that had diverted her path, and the years spent practicing in solitude. She realized that every step, every hardship had shaped her, preparing her for the moment when her talent could finally shine. The recognition she received was gratifying, but even more important was the affirmation that her passion and dedication had meaning and value. People began to notice small changes in her demeanor. There was a new lightness in her step, a quiet assurance in the way she moved through the world. She smiled more readily, her interactions with others carrying a warmth and openness that had not always been present. Yet she remained humble, never letting the praise or attention overshadow her dedication to her work and her love for music. She understood that the true reward was the connection she created through her playing, the emotions she could awaken in others, and the joy she could share. One afternoon, as she prepared for another performance, she found herself reflecting on the impact of her music. She remembered the surprised faces of the audience, the quiet awe, and the enthusiastic applause. She thought about the children who had listened intently, elderly who had been moved to tears, and the colleagues who had finally recognized her worth. Each memory reinforced the understanding that talent, when nurtured and expressed, has the power to transform lives and change perceptions. Her life at the center became a blend of routine and occasional spotlight moments. She maintained the order and care that had always been her responsibility, but she also embraced opportunities to perform. Each performance was unique, infused with emotion and personal expression. She discovered that sharing her music allowed her to connect with people in ways she had never imagined, creating a sense of fulfillment that extended beyond herself. The piano became not just an instrument, but a tool for communication, healing, and inspiration. The Caretaker also began mentoring younger musicians in the community. She offered guidance, encouragement, and practical advice, helping them navigate their own musical journeys. Her experience, patience, and empathy made her an effective and respected mentor. Through teaching, she realized that her influence extended beyond her own performances. She was shaping the next generation of musicians, instilling in them the same passion and dedication that had sustained her through the years. The music she shared became a legacy, touching lives in ways she had never anticipated. Despite the growing recognition and opportunities, she remained grounded. She understood the importance of humility, of continuing to work diligently, and of valuing the simple joys of life. She found contentment in the routine of her work, the quiet moments of reflection, and the music that flowed through her daily existence. She had learned that fulfillment did not require fame or accolades, but rather the ability to live authentically, to embrace one's talents, and to share them meaningfully with others. Her story became known within the community as an example of hidden talent, resilience, and the transformative power of dedication. People admired her not only for her musical ability, but also for her character, her humility, and her unwavering commitment to excellence in all aspects of her life. She had taught them an invaluable lesson. Greatness can exist in unexpected places, and those who are overlooked may possess extraordinary gifts waiting for the right moment to emerge. Over time, the Caretaker continued to perform, inspire, and nurture her community. Each day brought new opportunities, challenges, and experiences. But she approached them with the same dedication and quiet confidence that had always guided her. She knew that her journey had been shaped by both hardship and passion, and she embraced every aspect of it. The piano remained a central part of her life, a source of expression, connection, and joy, even in moments of solitude. She played for herself, reliving memories, exploring new melodies, and refining her craft. The music was a constant companion, a reflection of her identity, and a source of fulfillment that could not be diminished by time or circumstance. She understood that her story, her talent, and her passion were intertwined, creating a life that was rich, meaningful, and inspiring, the caretaker had expected nothing from life beyond her daily work. But through her dedication and love for music, she had discovered a world of connection, admiration, and personal fulfillment. Her journey was a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of nurturing one's gifts, and the profound impact that hidden talent can have when it is finally allowed to shine. She had transformed not only her own life, but also the lives of those around her, leaving a lasting impression that would be remembered and cherished. In the quiet moments of reflection, she acknowledged the journey that had brought her here, the early lessons, challenges, sacrifices, and the years of patient practice. She understood that each experience had contributed to her growth, preparing her for the moment when she could finally share her music with the world. The caretaker, once invisible, had become a symbol of talent, resilience, and the beauty of pursuing one's passion, showing that even in the most ordinary lives, extraordinary gifts can flourish when given the opportunity.